that are going to make this a bit more challenging. The idea behind ABSIP putting these conversations together is, of course, to enable us all to continuously check in on the state of the country, where we're headed, who's leading us, and how they're leading us. And on that note, I do not need to waste any more time because trust me, when CR is in the room, there's always going to be time constraints. There's going to be security that are going to come to me and tell me, Guti, there's a problem. And also, because he's scared of Langa, he's got a protector. There's a protector sitting there. The protector of the Amabovu clan, Mkuselim, is going to be also giving us a bit of a brief on who exactly CR is all about and what today's conversation is about. And over to you, the protector himself. Thank you.
Do I have a mic here, Kaya, or do I just speak? Oh, good afternoon, colleagues, and welcome to Sanlam. Thank you, Kaya. I am really the protector of Carl today, just to make sure that whatever Langa is going to be asking, then Carl must actually feel protected. My task, ladies and gentlemen, is actually very, very easy this afternoon. We're very much happy to be given this opportunity to host you or to host the roundtable at Sanlam premises today. I can tell you, you are really and truly at the right place and you have come at the right time. Briefly, I was actually given a task just to introduce who Carl is. But before I do that, it's always nice to just set the context, because some of you are not necessarily familiar with Sanlam, and maybe you've never heard in terms of who we are and what we do. And so I then have thought, therefore, that it would be great just for me just to give you a bit of a background or just a high-level highlights in terms of who Sanlam is. We are talking about an organization here that has actually been around for over 100 years, 104 to be quite exact. A big organization that has actually that prides itself or that has actually got very good empowerment track record. If I can tell you, I'm not supposed to bore you with all the details. I'm sure that you can Google some of the stuff, but there are important things that I really wanted to share with you so that when Carl speaks over here, you can get to understand the context within which he works in this particular organization. I said 104, and that is not a mistake. So we've seen quite a number of recessions. We've actually invested and actually delivered results through those. We've seen a number of pandemics, and Sanlam remained true to our objective of ensuring that we can empower generations to be financially confident and prosperous as well in terms of their agendas. If I can just tell you around our BE credentials, before BE became famous, in 1993, we actually did our first BE transaction. There's an organization called Metropolitan. That is where Sanlam basically gave that particular organization to Nail, which would have actually been the biggest black-owned financial services, financial institution at the time. In also fact, not only Sanlam did gave Nail that particular organization, what they did, they gave Metropolitan and Nail a 10-year runway so that they can actually be able, where Sanlam said, in the space where you operate, we're not going to compete with you, so that we can develop and kind of actually own that particular space. And that actually tells you around the DNA of this organization and how seriously do we take empowerment. And I'm sure as you will be asking questions to Carl, there are quite a number of other things that you will he can tell you about. The other thing that I want to say about Sanlam, this 104-year-old, we pride ourselves in keeping partnerships. We just don't do partnerships hit and run. We partner with people for the long term. And Carl had an opportunity just to talk to the young blood. I really felt young in that group this afternoon, Carl, to talk to young blood about what Sanlam Investment Group does. And that was a very good enlightenment in terms of looking at Sanlam over the years and looking at Sanlam into the future. We pride ourselves in terms of partnerships. And our BE transaction that we did in 2015 with Ubuntu Boto, those guys are still in charge. After about 10 years, we basically delivered value of over 15 billion rands. Those guys could have exited. We still have them as our partners today. So what am I saying? I'm saying that even people that are working for Sanlam, they kind of actually stay here forever because it is a multi-product house that actually provides careers in quite a number of different fields. And if you are here, you are basically at home. The last thing that I want to say, because we've spoken about Metropolitan in the past, I've just told you about the BE deal that we did, and I'm also just going to share with you that into the future, what is it that we have in the pipeline? I don't want to take a long time, Carl, but I do want to share that we've now just done a merger with, or a joint venture with Allianz, which actually puts Sanlam as, we trade in actual fact in over 33 countries. So we're the biggest non-banking financial service institution in the continent. So we're talking, we're really and truly a big player. We've just now entered into a partnership with Allianz, which also makes us a big and a significant player in this particular continent. And these are the two giants that are coming together, and I'm sure Carl will actually tell you a little bit more about that. Now, coming back to the speaker of the day, you know what he does, CEO, Sanlam Investment Group. Who is he? A young chap that basically grew up in the old Transvaal. He said that I need not say some of the other things because he doesn't want people, he just wants me to stick to what he does. And Carl, I said, I'm doing the introduction, so let me be. Born in Lichtenberg, in the Transvaal, very, very small town. Some of you don't even know that it exists. You pass it within 10 minutes, then you are out of the town. But most importantly, we asked Carl a few questions. What is it that energizes you? And he said, it is actually about empowering people. Building businesses and empowering people is something that really keeps me going. We also asked him another question, Carl, what is it that really keeps you awake at night? And he said, I will leave that one and I will explain when Langa is actually taking me through the interrogation. Carl studied law and moved to Boston, where he graduated with masters in commercial and banking law. And his career started basically at ABSIP when he came back into the country. And it's a very interesting story because he tells us that when he was actually deciding as to where to work after graduating in his law, then he had a cousin who was actually working for the big blue bank. You know which one that is? Standard Bank. And this friend of his then said to him, no, don't come to us. Go to ABSA. And they will tell you a little bit about that story. Because if you want to progress a little bit faster, there is some other thing that he said after that, of which I will leave that one to him. That's why he then basically started his career at ABSA. Two things that you can actually learn from this guy. Coming from a small town can never be a restriction in terms of reaching your dreams. And number two, when he kind of actually worked in ABSA, within 4 months of working at ABSA, he basically made an appointment with the CEO because he had a very big vision. We're talking about a big vision thinker who also implements that particular vision. He said, look, this is what I want to do. And, you know, the hierarchy, you know, if you know ABSA and the banking at that stage, you'd understand the character. He says there were 25 people between him and the top dog. And within 4 months, he worked and he presented his story. Then the rest is history, because what he says, his personal philosophy, demonstrated in what he did after 4 months of working with ABSA. I would like to read that one. Nothing lands on your lap. Keep doing the right things and you will end up at the right place. Let me repeat that. It's very powerful. Nothing lands on your lap. After 4 months, went directly to the CEO. Keep doing the right things and you will end up at the right place. Ladies and gentlemen, Langa is actually going to interrogate this man, so I don't want to say much. CEO of Sanlam Investment Group, Carl Rothman, over to you, sir.
Is this on?
Yeah. Okay. So it was a wise choice to choose this particular protector, because for as long as I've known him, I've called him my leader and been scared of him. But now I'm the one holding the mic. It's too late now. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Langa. Thank you for being here.
Yeah. So it's clear you're probably the most famous person from your town, because and you actually wanted to start your career out as a lawyer, and then you end up in banking, then you end up here. Maybe you can just give us a brief background, maybe around your journey, how it unfolded, how you end up CEO of Sanlam Investment Group.
So Langa, so thank you. So I think I'm the second most famous from my town. I think Koos de la Rey was also from Lichtenberg. So he still has a house there. And but it's quite interesting. So Lichtenberg is a small town. It's for those who don't know, it's just the first town before we get to the old Botswana. And I grew up actually at school. It's a very small town, not a lot happening, a big farmers community. And my dad was a lawyer, and he was actually a lawyer for the co-op in the town, and he did a lot of work with Botswana. Lucas Mangope, for those who are old enough, remember Lucas Mangope and all the policies. So my life was more about law. That's all I knew. And then I studied. I decided, well, but I don't know anything else. I'm going to study law. Went to University of Victoria, studied BCom and an LLB. And then in my last year, I realized that I didn't like law that much, right? So, and you'll see a little bit through my history, I do get bored with things pretty quickly. So my last year, I decided law's not really what I want, and I want to further my career a little bit more into the finance side of things. And I was quite a fairly good tennis player, and I actually wanted to go on a tennis scholarship to America to go and play tennis there. And my dad said, "There's no way that you're going to go to America. You will study and you will get a degree, and after you got a degree, we can talk." So so in my last year, I actually got articles in Pretoria, but I wanted to go overseas. So this was in 1993, right? So there was no internet. There was nothing that you could actually, enhance your skill set or get more knowledge. So long story short, I went to the embassy in Pretoria, studied all the different universities, and I saw there was a master's in financial and banking law at Boston University, and I decided, well, that's what I wanted to do. So I applied. I got in. I went to Trust Bank at the time. I got a loan from Trust Bank, and then I went to America. I studied there, and I actually tried to do as much finance as possible. So it wasn't my intention to become a lawyer afterwards. So I did quite a bit of finance, and then tried to do as many MBA subjects with a legal degree. And so at the end of that, I went with all my professors again, trying to figure out what's the right thing. And I said, listen, I'm here for an LLM, but I actually want to go into finance, into banking. So what do I need to do? So they said, well, take the minimum law degrees, you get your degree, take as many of the MBA courses. I did that. I kind of like did my own LLM in America, and then was very, very keen to come back. So I actually voted in Boston in 1994. There was a long queue of people voting, and very excited to get back to South Africa, very excited to make a contribution here. And actually, as MK said, my cousin was then working at, I should say this probably, my cousin was then working at Standard Bank. I called him, I said, listen, I'm back in South Africa. What you can give me advice? I don't want to practice law. And he said, no, I think you should go to ABSIP. And I said, why? He said, because their management's the weakest at the moment. I think you will progress at that time. So that was just after the merger. So apologies to ABSIP, they're big shareholders of our business, but that was at the time 1994. Yeah, and that's when I went into banking, and from there I kind of like different paths, and ended up 10 years ago with Sanlam Investments in Cape Town, and still there today.
Okay, so first tip we're taking away, especially for the students, look for weak management.
And I really hope that people don't talk about me in the same way, when they say which asset managers should they go to, and I go to Sanlam Investments. So hopefully I can prove them wrong.
Okay, so then I think Brian MK kind of segued us into this part. Tell us about your time with ABSA and that first 4 months.
So that's also actually quite interesting. So 2 things I can say. So maybe again a bit of advice to the young professionals. And I really enjoyed the session with him earlier before this, just to talk them through the business. So first of all, I went to America and had this big loan that I had to repay, and but I ended up in Market Street. In Market Street in a small little ABSA International. It's called International, but actually it's very basic. It's import bills, export bills, bill of lading, and you just stamp them. So I think I was the only graduate in the office, and I thought, it says ABSA International, it's not really what I'm looking for. Like, so it's not going to work for me. So I actually went through a little ABSA diary, and I saw there was an individual by the name of Doug Anderson. He was head of ABSA International. So I thought, well, I'm going to call him because I'm definitely I'm the right person, wrong place. Mm-hmm. So I called the secretary. I said, listen, who are you? I said, I'm Carl Rootman. So she said, well, what are you looking for? I said, I want to speak to Mr. Duck Anderson. She said, well, you can get an appointment 3 months from now. So I didn't realize still how senior he was. So 3 months later, I walked in, his office was, the secretary's office was probably as big as this room. His office was probably as big as Ellis Park. Thick carpets. I walked in there. He said, well, Duck Anderson. Said, well, Carl Rootsman, look each other in the eye. I thought we're equals. I sat on the couch, like a little bit like this, and then he started having a go at me. He said, well, there are literally 25 layers of people between you and me, and I'm on the exco of ABSIP, and what are you doing? So I said, listen, all I want to tell you is that I think I can do better. I don't think I belong where I am. I've got this plan. And after giving me a hard time, he actually called the head of HR for ABSA. They transferred me to another division, and from there my career took on. So then I went to London, and from it was a good. So I got the hiring of my life at an early age. But again, I guess the question or the point to most of our young professionals here is just, as I said, don't just accept where you are. Don't just accept what you have. Try in a nice way, talk to more people, try and figure out what's important in life, and don't be afraid to ask questions. I mean, I love the youth of today. They have got a lot more confidence than I grew up. Elderly, you're just there to be heard and not to speak. And I think that was the first thing with that. So the second important thing is just when I landed that job, I realized, but what I'm going to do, because I'm earning this much and my loan is this big, and how am I going to solve this? So one day, and I lived in Pretoria, so I was 5 o'clock in the morning driving up and down, picking up people to save money to get to Johannesburg. And then I figured out, but if I ask them if I stay here long enough, would they write it off? So, after another month, I actually went to the head of HR. I said, listen, obviously you're lucky to have me and ABSA. So if I stay with you long enough, would you write off my loan? And they said they did. And I think today in Rand terms, probably the biggest bonus I ever received, because in real terms, because they wrote it off, and I worked back the years for them, and it worked out quite well.
Tip number 2, sun up bigger than sun. I'm enjoying this conversation. You're coming with the gems quite early on. But okay, maybe take us a little bit more into your formative years. What do you think is some of the best advice that you have received that helped you in particular in navigating your career? Maybe share some of the brutal words you got as well.
So maybe if I think through advice, so my father was quite a forward-looking type of lawyer. He worked with Louis Late on the Triumph issues and the Cubas. I know probably young, but people older remember Nivot and the Cubas type of thing. So I definitely saw the good and the bad, and being quite close to Mabatu at the time, and seeing Kali Knudsen and John Tate. I realized there's a bit more in life than what you have in your town. So the first thing I advised to me is that is get as educated as you can. Like so stick to get educated as much as you can. Borrow, beg, just stay the course. Be patient. Do what you need to do. Do that diligently. Do that right. Do the right thing to people. Right, even if you don't. So keep on doing the right thing to people. Keep on looking after people. And if you do good education, doing the right thing, looking after people, then the wheel will turn and those things will come back to you. And so far in my career, I've really trying to do the same thing. I'm trying to further individuals' careers academically. In my career, send people overseas. I'm trying to keep on doing the right thing, not trying to be bigger than the business or bigger than people around you. And then if you look at the right people, there's people are always better than you. And we'll talk about diversity a little bit later on. But if you take the collective of 5 or 6 people and you keep on believing in people, then you will be a better leader, and you'll manage your career. So that's one of the things that I take up from young. That's still with me.
Okay.
And also maybe the last thing is being being big in a small dam is much better than being small in a big dam. So that's also something that I think that confidence from being someone in a small town probably carries with you for a long time.
Okay. Okay. I think earlier on you had spoken about now you come to Sanlam. So let's hear that part of the story. Your journey through Sanlam till you become CEO.
So my journey through Sanlam is also quite interesting. So I had a banking career, and I spent a significant amount of time with banks, but I wanted to move to the Cape. So I can share a little bit of a personal thing. Early on, I was involved in a development called Valdevi that some of you may know down in the Cape. And we were actually a bunch of young people, young students. I was 31, 32, not students, 31, 32 in a house in Pretoria. And one evening, one of my friends said, listen, I've got this dream to build this estate. And we all had a few beers, and you had the next morning to say, whether you're in or out. So I said, I'm in. So again, I went to the bank, I borrowed a lot of money and I invested, and it worked out quite well. But with that, I always wanted to move down to the Cape, and we just didn't make enough money. So through that development, because we had the financial crisis came, and to feed 30 dogs and eat 5 meals an evening to keep the restaurant going is quite a burden on your finances. So I always wanted to move down to the Cape, and then I started thinking, started talking, and I actually tried to find ways to move down to the Cape, and then the opportunity came with Sanlam. And again, I mean, I had probably about 2 years of discussions with the CEO then of the time, but what is the right opportunity for the business or for me? And then I joined Sanlam in October 2013, so that's 10 years ago. And my first role was head of distribution. Actually, interesting, if I come back, I was appointed as the chief client officer. No one in the business knew what a chief client officer. I also didn't know what the chief client officer was. So all I was is like, I was a chief client officer, and a note went out to the board. And actually interesting, so when a month before I joined the business, the CEO had a strategic session, and in that strategic session, they realized, listen, but there's no role for a strategic chief client officer. So after the session, I said to him, listen, so what's my role? I said, I don't know what your role is, but you were part of the strat session, so just live with it. So but anyway, long story short, I ended up head of distribution in Sanlam Investments. So that was basically to look after growing the business, growing the assets under management with Sanlam, to try and build the brand for Sanlam Investments, try and build a bigger retail business, work with the asset management. So I did that for a couple of years, and then I moved to head of the multi-manager for 4 or 5 months. They call me sometimes in Sanlam Investments, they call me Desmond Roy, because I was only there for a couple of months. Some of them Desmond Roy as Minister of Finance, but that also gave me very good insight into the multi-manager. And then opportunity came for CEO for Sanlam Private Wealth, which is our largest private wealth business. I was appointed CEO there and did that for 3 years, and then the opportunity being appointed as head of Sanlam Investments Group. So I think in hindsight, I understand the asset management business quite well, I understand the client base within Sanlam quite well, and that actually I think was a good opportunity set for me and gave me enough experience to play the role that I have today.
Okay. Tip number 3, go to the strategy session. Okay. Okay, now you are at Sanlam, and I think a lot of people know Sanlam Group, etc., etc. What is Sanlam Investment Group? What does the business do, and how does it work?
So Sanlam Investments Group is actually a remarkable business and organization. And the first responsibility, I'll talk a little bit through the business, but the first responsibility is that you have an incredible responsibility to look after the savings of our policyholders and our clients that invest in different products within Sanlam. So first of all, when we wake up in the morning, you need to provide those clients and those policyholders with the best return that you can provide. So that is our main objective. So, you know, when you retire, that you retire with dignity, that you can pass something on to your loved ones and to your children. But that is our main responsibility. But within that, we have 4 big divisions within Sanlam. The first one is our asset manager, and that is traditional asset manager, as most of you would know. But we have 4 distinct areas in there. We have our active asset management, we have passive Satrix, we have a multi-manager, and then we have an alternatives business, which is what we call private markets, where we start investing in on-balance sheet type of products, non-listed type of entities. So that is the asset manager. Second part of Sanlam Investments is what we call our investment bank, balance sheet management. That's where we look after the Sanlam balance sheet in terms of guaranteed products, derivative products to guarantee those products, invest into credit assets, the wealth business, and then our offshore asset management. So in essence, it's the asset management, managing of money part of the bigger Sanlam Group.
Okay, and now we come to why we are here. Transformation. Can you tell us about the makeup of the transformation of the business, diversity, inclusion, how the business is set up now, where you're thinking of going into the future, and why is that important for you as Sanlam?
Okay. So I can talk about Sanlam, and then I'm going to talk about Sanlam Investments Group.
Let's focus on investment.
On the investment group. So I think the first thing that's important when you talk about transformation, I think it's transformation, sustainability, diversity. For me, it's a combination of all of that. And the first thing that's very important for Sanlam Investments Group is that we made a statement years ago that to look after people's money and provide them for financial performance and the right financial returns is incredibly important. But with that, we have an incredible responsibility to South Africa, to the people of South Africa, to the economy of South Africa, to transformation in South Africa, to make a difference because we are custodians of capital. And if you only provide a financial return, you're only doing half your work. The other half of it is how do we utilize that capital to make a real difference in South Africa? So our DNA, core in our business, is sustainability, transformation, and diversity. To make sure that we leave a legacy in this country and in Africa through the way that we invest our money. And if you go through that, those are core pillars in our active manager and our passive manager, the multi-manager alternatives, and everyone in our business. And the way we do it is if you think through it and why we're actually here is that we decided as Sanlam Investments Group and as Sanlam that just to have a scorecard and just to be a level 1 on a scorecard is not enough. I think we've been through that the last 15 years. And it's actually more important for us now to make a difference to the economy and the people in South Africa. So we spent a significant amount of time on the second part of the business, and that is utilizing this money to save our planet, and to invest in so the United Nations came out with those sustainable goals a couple of years ago. We made it part of our core DNA to take 15 of those goals and to make sure that we start investing our money, we start building our business in line with those goals. And some of those goals are education, employment, equity, diversification, saving the planet, and that comes through in the DNA and everything that we do. So what we're doing with transformation is we're taking it to the next level. And we want that I can give you a few examples. So I don't want to take too long to answer your question, but we can go through examples now. We actually want to use our capital, use our scale to make a difference and create employment in South Africa, invest into infrastructure in South Africa, create a diversified and inclusive society. And I can give you a few more details on that in South Africa and also in Africa through the 33 countries that we now invested in Africa.
Okay, let's then drill down into your business and how are you looking now from a transformation perspective?
Okay, so from a transformation perspective, so I can maybe just mention a few statistics to the audience of those that are dialing in Sanlam Investments Group. Over the last 5 years, we've employed 97% of our new recruits, new employees in our business over the last 5 years have been African, Indian, or colored. And of that, more than 53% were female and less than 50% male. So from an employment recruitment perspective, I think we've done so phenomenal in bringing diversity into our business and different skill sets into our business, which makes a significant contribution to our business, as I'll mention to you now. The second thing is from a investment professionals perspective. So I can give an example. So our head of active, Natasha Narsingh, female, head of Satrix, Fakile, female, head of alternative, Mervyn, Indian male, and our head of a multi-manager, Sean Reuters, is colored male. So it's quite a diverse business, but then within our professionals. So, you have to go find the hard to go and find investment professionals in our business that are just all just male, just from one grouping. So we really try to bring African, Indian, colored right into our investment professionals, into our ESG capabilities, into setting up our debt structures, into investing into infrastructure, into sustainability. And the reason for that is I think with my background in Lichtenburg in the 80s, I would have a different view on sustainability than, for example, Fakile, who's 20 years, or she looks much younger than 20 years or more than my junior. She's female. She grew up in a different part of the country. Her view of sustainability and inclusivity is different. and running a big business, and the passion that she has and how she starts directing investment strategies to that is one of the practical examples of how we bring that into our business.
Okay, that's me. Your bonus check.
No, but she needs to. No, but she needs to give me a good rating by the end of the year. So it's vice versa.
Okay. No. Okay. So that's amazing. And I think one of the questions that we frequently get as ABSIP is financial services relevant for the majority of the population? Do you think that like the products that we're putting into the market, be it in the passives business or in Novit's business, are we creating products that the average South African person can actually buy into and understand why they're buying into them and enhance their likelihood of achieving financial freedom?
So I'm going to answer it in two ways. So the one is that financial banking products, if you split banking products from let's call it financial, insurance, retirement products. I think banking products are, in my mind, fairly simple. So it's something that you have access to. You either invest money or you borrow money, and you know what you pay for it, and you can settle it whenever you want to or repay it. Financial services are complicated because there are certain tax implications, there are retirement implications, there are investment implications, there are guaranteed products, less guaranteed products. So in my mind, I do not think we do enough as an industry to make it simpler. I do not think it's well understood in the market, and therefore that's why many old traditional wider financial insurance companies like insurance companies have a big intermediated force, because you need intermediated force to go and explain the different permutations and when can you redeem, when can you not, how does it lapse, what are the tax implications. What we need to do as an industry is to make it simpler, make it easier. So one of the areas that we're trying to do, for example, in Satrix, is to say, well, how do you bring the market to the individuals? How can someone invest 100 Rand or 50 Rand into a Naspers that is 30,000 Rand a share, or into a share that's or process that's 1,800 Rand a share as of this morning, maybe. So how do you bring education to that market? How do you bring accessibility to that market? And how do you actually make it very easier for them to invest, either directly, understand the implications? So we still have a long way to go longer in that. And I think collectively as an industry, we need to design products where there's not too many embedded profits that sit somewhere else, but that the clients actually understand it and we actually make it very accessible. And what we're trying to do, for example, in Africa. So as MK mentioned, we're more than 33 countries in Africa. Financial penetration in those countries are very low. So we're going with partnerships with, for example, MTN, where we try to get into insurance, short-term insurance, medical type of products, and therefore we need to educate how you actually make financial services more affordable. In my view, I think Africa is going to lead before South Africa. So rest of Africa, because technology and the way and the size of the investment, I think it's going to leapfrog technology in South Africa from an innovation perspective, and hopefully that will come back to South Africa so we can make more South Africans and make it easier and easier understandable. If we don't do that, I don't think the industry is going to grow fast enough.
Okay. I think earlier on when we were with the students, you did mention that you are investing for jobs. Maybe let's spend a little bit more time understanding what that means.
So I would love to expand a little bit on this. So as Sanlam Investments and as Sanlam, the Sanlam Investments Group, we, as I said, we really want to take transformation and to the next level. It's not just a scorecard, it's not just filling in forms, not just about putting in what our management team looks like and what our recruitment stats look like. What we're doing, so this started a while back, as I mentioned, but in COVID, we realized that there are many corporates and small and medium-sized enterprises that are in difficulty, significant amount of jobs online. And what we decided, we created what we call a legacy range. And that legacy range is part of our DNA. And so from a debt perspective, we set up a fund. And actually, I must compliment Eskom Pension Fund who's also talking to us and helped us set up one of these funds with a very specific mandate. But our SME debt fund had a very specific mandate, and that mandate was to go and lend money to small, medium-sized corporates who are in the process of where they're losing jobs because of COVID, or they need to create more jobs through their normal business practices, they are either black-owned businesses or they are women-owned businesses. So various criteria, and we focused on the tourism sector and we focused on the agri sector. The reason for that is because we thought the tourism, the manufacturing sector, not the manufacturing sector, and the agri sector. Manufacturing sector, because that's where you create more employment. We need more manufacturing. We need to grow in that business, and agri for the same reason. So what we've done since then, we've invested more than 2.5 billion into a fund that actually invests in those businesses, and it's actually and we track the amount of jobs that we created. So if I can talk in high level, since then through alternatives in these funds, we've touched more than 35,000 lives in South Africa. We've secured employment, we've created more employment, we've turned companies around, and we're not just investing in the companies. So what we're doing is we're trying to get into their procurement, we're trying to part ways with education, we're trying to help with management skills in those businesses. So on our debt funds, you know, we're into water projects, into housing projects, into obviously creating jobs, into schooling projects. The flip side to that is in our private equity business, we actually did exactly the same for our legacy. We set up a mandate to specifically invest in these medium-sized companies with the same criteria in terms of transformation and management and transforming South Africa. And one of the transactions we did was the Cavalier, where we bought a stake in the business. We saved, I think, more than 400 or 500 jobs. Since then, we've created 100 more jobs, and that transaction was actually also voted the best private equity transaction at the time. So in the one side, you're actually creating the right return for your clients, but on the other side, actually you're seeing all this fruit of what you do in terms of creating jobs and transforming the economy. And maybe just the last point I don't want to mention is what Sanlam is doing additional. So Sanlam also, through unclaimed policy money, provided funding to the same team, because they have the right expertise, to go after smaller companies that provide procurement to Sanlam, people that need equity participation. So the mandate was listen, don't lose money for us, but we provide you with cheap funding, interest-free, and go there and make a difference in South Africa. And that fund is now nearly fully invested. And again, come back to diversity. If I had to go and sit there and invest, I don't think I would have been successful then. But I think Erica and Kukile and everyone that sits in that team is a lot more successful. They know where to look for, they know where the needs are. And hopefully that fund, if we're successful, that we can go to many other corporates in South Africa and say, we have a success story, invest with us, and let's make that 253 billion, 4 billion, and many, many other corporates invest in that. That, I think, is what collectively how we can make a difference, and examples of what we've done.
Okay. I think Kaya outlined the fact that your initials are CR. So maybe as a potential future president of this country next year, and we discussed this at length, where you said your first decision would be to make me deputy president. It seems every CEO wants that, yeah. But what would be your priorities, and what do you think we need to do to get South Africa going again?
Listen, it's a very difficult question, because so many people have solutions and answers, right? This is like choosing a soccer team or a rugby team. Everyone has a solution, but I think the biggest issue for me in our country is execution. Right, we need to be able. So we're very good in coming up with policies. I think we're very good with coming up with legislation, but the problem lies in execution. So if I'm the president and I could sit in that chair, even if it's just for 6 months, I would want everyone to ask the same question. Whatever we do, the first question is, are we creating a job? So it doesn't matter what the policy is, doesn't matter what the industry is, doesn't matter what we're trying to do. The first question is this, whatever we're going to do, is it going to create a job? And if it's not going to create another job in South Africa, then let's not do it. Let's park it on the back burner. That's the first thing. The second thing is I would like to prioritize on 4 or 5 things. I think we have too many things at the moment. Let's prioritize 4 or 5 things, and let's get it done. And the third thing I would probably want to do is, I think we need to think a little bit differently about our tax system. So I'll give you an example. So if you can go to people that pay, let's say, above a certain threshold tax. So let's say take a little bit of centralization away from the government. So how do we ignite this country and this economy? So one of the things I would like to do is actually say, well, so if you earn above a certain threshold, you pay above a certain threshold tax. Can you take that tax and buy a house to someone? That's, you have all these development houses. Can I go and finance that house? Can I ask Carl Roodman pay for that house, and can I get a tax deduction from that? Because if you can do that, then you can go to companies, you can develop more houses, you can do it faster, you can do it cheaper. I get that my tax incentive, and this incentive for me, the government doesn't have to do it. And you kind of like very, very quickly privatize that sector. Another thing you can do is, the legislation came out a while back that from a tax perspective that you get an 8,000 rand deduction for solar, but 8,000, I think it's one panel. So why don't we just get more better tax incentives, get more solar panels out there? If I can invest in that same house that I built, that I finance, if I can invest in solar, if that individual who lives in that house can take that energy, excess energy, sell that back into the grid, create additional income, create industries around that, create manufacturing. Those are the things that I would love to do. So it doesn't have to be a 10-year program, but I just think we need execution. We need to organize ourselves a little better, and I think we need to be less obsessed with control and trying to control everything that we have in this country. Just to let South Africa and the people just start taking control of entrepreneurship, because we have such an amazing country in entrepreneurship. You can travel the world, and I've traveled the world quite a bit. I don't think there is a country that is as resilient, as entrepreneurial, as fast moving, and as innovative as we are. So I think we would just give that power a little bit back to the people.
Okay. Takeaway number 4. This CR only needs 6 months. Now I'm going to move over to some questions first from online, and then take some questions from the room. First question from online. Post the acquisition of ABSA's asset management business, what are you doing to ensure that the culture integration works so that Black staff members do not leave?
Okay, so I think the first thing what works quite well for us with that merger is that the cultures are very similar. So in the old days, Sanlam had a big shareholding in ABSA. So I think if you think about the investment philosophy, the investment cultures, I think it's very similar. I think it's different if you have a large institutional asset manager that merges with a boutique manager. Here, I think you can tick that box. Secondly, I think we've done a significant amount of work to plan out exactly how this merger is going to work. So this merger has been 4 years in the making. So I think some individuals already left before the merger, but after we could figure out exactly who's going to work in what department, what philosophies they have, who are the clients, what are the clients looking for, what type of mandate, so that we can actually merge that as well. The third thing is that there's opportunity for everyone in our business, right? So because it is a large asset management business, and maybe if I can give another example, we do have like any normal corporate, you have a retention or nutrition rate of people leaving the business of roughly 7-8%. So if you have 1,000 employees and you have 70-80 people that change, there's so much opportunity to accommodate everyone from ABSA, to accommodate everyone in the merger. And when I talk through the diversity of our business, maybe accommodate in the asset manager, we can also accommodate in the wealth business, in the private markets business, in management roles. So I think so far, it's 4 months in, I think so far we've done fairly well. I haven't seen many ABSA fallout from employees. So I think the process will be quite well. I think our clients are fairly well. Our assets keep on growing, and all the forecasts that we've had for this merger, so far we're meeting all the forecasts. And those are not just profits forecasts, it's actually revenue forecasts, which means that the assets stay with us and our clients stay with us.
Okay.
The big exciting thing for me, actually, so to take it another angle, is actually the distribution network. So I think to add, at Sanlam Investments, we understand distribution quite well, being part of the bigger Sanlam group, and to go after the distribution network and see how we can work with ABSA to grow the distribution network and provide more investment product to the distribution network, I think will be very good for our business.
Okay. Second question relates to the inverse of what you just answered. Do you not fear that South Africa is converging towards having oligarchs in the asset management space?
Only?
oligarchs, whatever. I don't know what is this. No, I just read these things.
Does that mean bad asset manager?
No, huge.
Oh,
Yeah,
huge.
that monopoly. That's the one.
So was it like consolidation, like too large or too big? So I think there's a few things that are driving asset management globally, and then we can talk about South Africa specifically. So globally, there's definitely fee margins are under pressure, fees are under pressure. There's a consolidation globally of asset managers, and I think our merger with ABSIP is part of that consolidation in South Africa. But what we play a big part is we can manufacture product, I think, cheaper for our clients, because more scale you have, the more you can absorb that cost and the better it is for the end client. So I think we play an incredibly important role there. So although you get bigger and bigger, your scale and your efficiencies and your lower cost actually make financial services, financial product a lot more acceptable. But on the other side, I do think there's a big role to play for smaller boutique-ish type of asset managers to grow in South Africa. It's very important that those asset managers are also reflective of South Africa. It's very important that we all help and build black asset management firms in South Africa. So the one part is that we are getting bigger, but I think we're also using our scale. I'll give you an example. So how do we use our scale? So we have a large asset manager of more than 200 billion of assets. It got bigger with the ABSA merger, but what do we do very well is as we go through our screening process to allocate assets to different asset managers, we've actually helped build a few black-owned asset managers, or we've helped contributed to a few black-owned asset managers. So we've got now more than 25 billion of assets allocated to up-and-coming black-owned asset managers. We've got success stories. It goes through our screening. So we use our scale in a different way so I'm not going to mention the names of those asset managers, but I can think about 3 or 4 asset managers that we've actually, and our largest Sanlam unit trust in our multi-manager today is actually being managed. That fixed income strategy is actually being managed by one of the black-owned asset managers with a woman leadership component. So we're actually, again, using our scale to plow back into the industry and to help the industry. So I think there's also benefit in having a few large asset managers, because you also contribute to the rest of the industry. And I think the balance would probably come out.
Okay, I'm going to take some questions from the room before we come back here. You see the young people. Yes, ma'am.
I hope the questions are easier than earlier.
You spoke about how, in terms of employment, how 97% are Black and 53% are female. Many people have this stereotype that large companies only employ people, especially for graduate opportunities from like these top universities. But many people don't go to these, especially lots of Black people don't attend these top universities because of fees and staying close to home. And even when you look at career fairs and where recruiters go to, they go to these universities. So is there anything that Sanlam is doing to make sure that there's equal opportunity for everyone? Doesn't depend on your institution of higher learning to like get the opportunity to work at an institution such as this?
That's actually a very good question. So, and I actually make me think quite a bit. So we do have quite a large graduate program, and in Sanlam Investments Group, we're actually now busy building again a program to bring young talent into our business and to go for good careers. But actually, usually you go to the UCTs, the Stellenbosch, University of Pretoria, around. So I think maybe MK, we must make a note there. So I think it's actually, and I'm going to go back to my exco. So as we build this program, maybe it comes back to diversity and inclusion. Let's go to all the different universities and find talent across all those universities, because it does make a difference. Like, people have different views. If you have too many of the same people, come from the same background, the same thinking, the same lecture type of thing, then you're going to come to the same answer. So why have 4 if one can give you the answer? So I think if you have more diversity and different backgrounds and different, we're also not just looking for typical actuary CFA type of, we're also looking for people, data analysts, good for management skills, looking for all sorts of different stuff. So So your question, I will take that into an action because it's actually very. I haven't thought about it before. MK.
We have actually built partnerships with a number of universities, mainly with Uganda and one in NMMU, so we've got relationships with a number of but your question is right relevant because in terms of some of the other things like the strength that we're doing some of it is still skewed
towards the big ones.
Yes. So it is something that we're definitely working towards applying the rest of the equity in terms of how we allocate the spend across the
Yeah. BK, can you make sure she's at all the roundtables where I'm not moderating? You can't ask tougher questions.
Well, I think she's going to be there for the next fall because she's going to work at Sanlam. So we need to,
Yeah. No. Is there any more questions from the floor? Yes, ma'am. Hey.
Good afternoon. When we were previously, you said transformation is about diversity, community and inclusion. My question is, what are your plans for the next 5 years of business and economy through investment based on transformation?
so just as my plans for the next 5 years?
Yes. Your plans for the next 5 years of the business and economy through investment. Then the next question, previously you spoke about how there was a slide that you said, aiding scale, you have ABSIP, right? So my question is, what will your clients gain from the enhancement of investment offering you in emerging with ABSIP?
Okay, so I think if I can answer the second one first. So obviously, I think the clients in ABSIP, if I can talk about ABSIP, will have a wider product set that they can invest in, and hopefully that product set will be produced at a lower cost, which makes it increases their returns, and actually provide them with better outcomes. And obviously, as ABSIP grows, and obviously there's also benefit to ABSIP because through the distribution network from the bank, they can take more product to those clients. They can have better discussions with those clients, but obviously also lead into us from the ABSIP side to better financial penetration and more banking products. So I think it will work quite well for both asset managers. In terms of plans for transformation and exclusivity, I think you can think about it different ways. One thing I do want to mention that I didn't mention before is one of our success stories is a partnership in a business called Climate Fund Managers. So we have a shareholding in that business. It's based in the Netherlands. The Dutch Development Agency is the other shareholder there. And so far through that strategy, we've raised $2 billion. And that fund is specifically what we call climate change. And I'm going to come back to transformation and inclusivity. And they launched 2 funds. The first fund was a green energy, where we actually set up renewable energy plants in Africa, in Asia, wind farms, Morocco, Tanzania, different countries in South Africa. And the first thing what that helps is brings developed money into Africa and into South Africa. So it's not just our own money. We use developed money into those entities. The second fund that they've launched is what we call the Water and Oceans Fund. That also closed at nearly $1 billion, and that was basically water projects, ocean water to clean water projects, providing water security to various places in Africa. Now, what we do in both of those funds is that we actually take transformation exclusivity to another level. We also invest in the villages where they're close to those projects. We provide employment and education in some of those villages. We try to bring financial inclusion to those villages. So we're not just doing the project, we're actually investing into those communities as well. The third fund that they're launching now is a green hydrogen plant, which is Namibia is very close to finalizing that. I think again, that may propel Namibia into a different type of status. But again, a lot of construction, a lot of people that you need to employ. Probably schools will go with it. It's a huge workforce that will go with it. Through that, we actually also are the catalyst for transformation and exclusivity and employment in those areas. And from a private markets perspective, our biggest drive, because we have the capital from Sanlam and the balance sheet from Sanlam, which puts us in a better position than many other asset managers. So we will continue to invest in what we call our private market strategy. And that would be housing, social development, infrastructure in South Africa. We want to become one of the biggest infrastructure players. And with all of that comes transformation, comes employment, and hopefully financial inclusion through those markets.
Okay, I have another question for you from online. It says, you reiterate that Sanlam supports you with the balance sheet. Should we anticipate to see more consolidative acquisitions from Sanlam Investment?
Not in the near future. So large acquisitions, I think we need to settle with ABSA and make sure. Usually, I would think if you look at statistics in the world, I think 90% of mergers and acquisitions are not successful. So it's an absolute priority for me and my team to make this merger as successful as possible. Firstly, for the clients, the people, the money that we invest in, and then obviously for the shareholders, the people, and various stakeholders. So that's the first thing. But then we do look at smaller opportunities. As I said, we buy into smaller boutique asset management firms, either from a transformation perspective or we think that they need specific expertise or strategies that we can't manufacture. So we'll continue to do that. And then I think part of our strategic intent is also we are already dominant passive player in South Africa through Satrix, and my discussions with Kile often is this: how do we really expand that growth in that passive space? And you need to really own. If you think about BlackRock and Vanguard, you really need, I think, 35. You need to get 55% market share. So we need to think about how we do that. But I don't think in the interim, I do not think we will see another large merger in our business.
I have the mic.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I've given you the floor.
Thank you. I wanted to ask you a question around Sanlam's plans to have a female CEO, around succession plan. Are you looking at handing over the reins to Fikile? If you are at liberty to share those plans, because you talk so much about diversity, and I think we cannot miss the gender element of that conversation.
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. So if you think about skill set in the asset management industry and in the banking industry, I think a couple of years ago you saw a lot of movement between top talent, let's call it top black talent. And I think what's very encouraging is what you see through the trends the last couple of years. It's a lot of people come through the system and come through that experience and the DNA, which I think is very, very important. So from my perspective, definitely, we all have succession planning. We're all thinking about the future, thinking about different people in different roles. So I would love to think that when I step down, that someone that would take over for me would come from within Sanlam, and that person would have cut their cloth within the Sanlam DNA, and hopefully it's Fikile or someone else within the business in line with transformation, or maybe female as well. And I think we need to create that culture that actually you can have a succession plan that people can build. So it's definitely part of our plan. And I think we've done that quite successfully in various parts of our business. I mean, Natasha is a good example. Natasha has been a portfolio manager for so many years, and she's now the head of SIM, and I think that was the talent that came through. I mean, Mervyn, sitting in the audience here, was in our Sanfin balance sheet management business. He's now our head of our Sanfin alternative type of business. So definitely, I think. Hopefully not this year, but I can still just see Christmas through. But definitely part of our plans, and we take it. I mean, we take it very serious, and it's definitely. But for me, it's a natural thing. If I think about our business, I'll give you an example. So Sanlam Investments Exco is total diverse. I think it's one white individual, which is me, and the rest is all African female, black, colored Indian, and hopefully the next succession and CEO should come from that population.
Okay.
And then build through from the bottom up again to give them opportunity.
Students, I gave you half an hour exclusively with Carl. Half an hour. And you don't know how much he charges.
I'll give you a discount on a Satrix product.
Carl, thanks very much for a very interesting discussion this afternoon. My question is slightly, different to what's currently being discussed around transformation. I think I'd rather, for now, focus on whether transformation within the industry is going to happen with human capital, or is it going to more significantly start to take shape as a result of technological disruption? And with that in mind, I'm asking really what is going to actually happen if technology starts to take over, especially the automated practices in asset management, and less so obviously in private equity, because I think private equity requires a little bit more human intervention in structuring and negotiating transactions, as opposed to the more automated processes that take place in the open markets. So I'd like you to comment on that and how you see the industry actually growing or not in terms of its demand on human capital, and whether human capital as we know it today and its application is going to evolve quite radically over the next 3 to 5 years, because I think we've got pretty short time frames for these things to happen.
Yeah, so it's a very good question. So I think if you think about the asset management industry compared to, for example, other financial services industries like banking, I think asset management industry is very slow. So if I think about the discussions we have with an industry 10 years ago, and we still have the same discussions, we haven't seen enough disruption in that market from a technology perspective. So I think it's going to disrupt very quickly over the next 4 to 5 years. But again, you need to, and I'll give you an example. Let's take Satrix, for example. Let's take Easy Equities, for example. So I think Easy Equities is a disruptor in our industry. We actually own a share in Easy Equities because we wanted to be part of a business that we thought, it might disrupt very quickly and move very fast with new technology. And that business is also growing quite fast to a point, but then you need more support, you need more balance sheet for that. But I think the disruptors are very close, and I think the asset management industry needs to think about this, and we need to be more aware of this. And I think if you move from active to passive, I think that's going to drive a big part of it, because if you use technology that provides you with access to products that you can switch between different passive providers where you're going to get the market, then it's all about what product you can invest in at the lowest cost and how quickly you can switch. You don't need lots of people to provide you with that additional alpha, and is that alpha worth your while? So I think the disruption is going to come very, very quickly, but I don't think it's going to come in, we can have more algorithms that's going to provide us with an outcome. We've seen a lot of AI type of products, and I haven't seen many AI type of product that disrupts where you can get rid of teams that provide you with a specific philosophy. I think this whole move to passive and own the market, where it's actually all about cost, if you overlay that with technology, I think that's where the market's going to move. And if you're not ready, you're not set up for that, I think you're gonna lose out. So my view is you're going to see a lot more consolidation in the asset management industry in South Africa and globally. And these type of products is going to, and I think the people who provide it, the technology will make us, and the cryptocurrency already did quite a bit of that. If you think about how much money moved into cryptocurrency over the last year or two without advice, without actually, you're not sure what is the cryptocurrency, what's the underlying asset? Is it actually currency? Is it an asset? Is it a return? What is that? But the disruption has been phenomenal. So we took a little bit of a negative turn over the last couple of months, but I think that type of market force and that type of disruption is definitely going to come into the asset management industry. And I don't think we'll be ready and set up for that.
Okay. Last online question. I gave you guys a chance. Last online question says, would you tell your son to invest in South Africa, and if so, why?
In a business. So maybe one thing is, so my son's studying in America and he just wants to come back every day. So so that already says a lot. I would want my son to invest in South Africa. I think there are significant opportunities, entrepreneurial opportunities in South Africa to invest, but I want a responsible government. So I want a government that makes it worthwhile for my son and every young individual here to know that if I'm going to invest my money in South Africa, I'm going to choose to live here, I'm going to choose to bring up my children here. I want a sustainable, investor-friendly South Africa that comes with all the other beauty that and the government needs to stand up and say, South Africa is more friendly from an investment perspective than Taiwan or Thailand or India or South Korea or South America. And so it's not just a one-way emotional investment. You need a government that provides you with that security and surety, and that's what all of us in South Africa wants.
On that note, CR24, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity, and good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much to CR24. I am making my services available to run the campaign. I'll make sure that the donor details are kept as secret as they need to be. So all those of you that want to support the spirited campaign, you're definitely welcome to put your hands into the kitty and support this particular initiative. And I think on that note, for me, the big conversation is really around the various lessons, the leadership lessons, and the personal reflections that we got to hear today. And of course, the issues that drive the man and the key national agenda items that we're all tackling in our own particular spaces. I am not an oligarch yet, and I'm not sure if somebody is planning on becoming one, but I do think the question about the market concentration issues is always going to come back. And that tension point between, well, it's cheaper for the customer if they scale versus, well, we want more businesses to thrive in the sector. That's an ongoing ping pong that the country at large is going to struggle with. So thank you very much, Mr. CR. And I don't know if there's a graphic designer here who's happy to put out their hand to start designing the logo for CR24, trying to make this happen. Thank you also very much to the young people that had very difficult questions. So I couldn't ask anything. I'm like, yo, we covered today. So the young professionals, thank you very much for being here. And also specifically to the Sanlam guys that helped us put this together. The Sanlam investment groups were very, 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 very thorough in telling us what to do. And more importantly, they did bring us a round table, because that's a very important part of the optics. It's always awkward when there's a square table and you're like, yo, these accountants can't even get the simple things right. And also to everybody that attended, particularly the guys that are online that took some time to recharge. I don't know how they did it with load shedding, but clearly, the need to listen to this conversation was much bigger than ESCOM trying to sabotage us. So thank you very much for that. And we will obviously have another follow-up session, another roundtable in a couple of weeks' time. I can't remember the date, Bogiwe, but you'll get it. You'll get the link, you'll get the reminder, and you're going to see exactly how these conversations are developing over time. And on that note, I'm now thinking the longer I speak, the hungrier I become, but then that means that I deny you people the right to eat outside. So let me start a new conversation so that they don't eat, but the conversation is that the snacks will be served outside. And thank you very much for participating in this roundtable.
What's going to be your song? My song? Yeah, the campaign song. What's that Mendoza?